Thank you for watching this 25-minute budget tutorial. This tutorial is for CDF applicants that would like guidance on filling out their organizational and project budgets in the CDF application and drafting comprehensive budget notes. We'll also cover how panelists use the budgets to evaluate applications under the organizational accountability criterion.
¿Tiene alguna pregunta en español? Puede pedir asistencia en español enviando un email al helpdesk al cdfhelpdesk@culture.nyc.gov. Su pregunta será contestada por uno de los program officers que hablan español lo más rápido posible.
For questions or requests regarding accessibility or accommodations when viewing this video, please contact our Disability Service Facilitator at disabilityfacilitator@culture.nyc.gov. Please download the budget worksheet and CDF guidelines from the applying page of our website and have them on hand during the tutorial for reference. We recommend completing your budgets in the worksheet first before transferring them to the online application form. How are applications evaluated by panelists, and where do the budgets fit in? Applications are evaluated by panelists based on how they meet our 3 evaluative criteria: 1, public service and impact, 2, organizational accountability, and 3, quality. In this tutorial, we will focus on the organizational accountability criterion because your budgets and financial information fall mostly under that criterion during the panel's evaluation, though this information can also have an impact on the review of other criteria. For more information on the full scope of the organizational accountability criterion, as well as public service and impact and quality, please review our guidelines and attend an application webinar, either live or recorded. The webinar schedule and link to the recording can be found on the applying page of our website. Organizational accountability comprises 35% of your score at panel. Applications that score highly on this criterion demonstrate the organization is accountable, sustainable, and has the capacity to provide cultural programs that are realistic and relevant to its mission, focus, and audiences served. Panelists use several sections to evaluate applications under this criterion, a full list of which can be found in our guidelines. The organizational and project budgets are 2 key sections used in the evaluation of organizational accountability. There, panelists are looking for evidence of responsible and stable fiscal planning that is appropriate to the organization's budget size and age and demonstrates the organization's ability to deliver the proposed project. More than just numbers, a budget tells a story about your organization's mission and values. When paired with comprehensive budget notes, it serves as a vital companion to your CDF application, helping panelists evaluate your organizational accountability. We recommend working on your budgets offline first using the budget worksheet provided in Excel format and which you should have downloaded for this tutorial. As you can see on this slide, not only does the worksheet provide help text defining each line item, it has dynamic fields to show % change or variation between fiscal years and calculate surplus or deficit. This is similar in layout to how panelists will view your budgets with all budgets shown together, but different from how you will enter the budgets in the online application form. There, you will enter your project and organization budgets in 2 separate sections. First, you will complete the project budget in the project summary section under public service and impact, and then your annual operating budgets in the organizational budget section. When working in the online application form, you can click the red Budget Overview button at the top of the project summary section or the top of the operating budget section to review your annual operating and project budgets together. They will be formatted how panelists will view them, like the budget shown here with the annual operating budgets to the left and the project budget to the right. Note that although we have included sample budget numbers on many slides, these are just examples. Please don't assume they represent strong budgets, and it should go without saying that the numbers you input into your budgets should be your organization's own. Additional written instructions on completing your budgets can be found in our application worksheet, which provides help text for all application questions and is also available on the applying page of our website. So what information are you asked to provide in your budgets? For both your project budget and annual operating budgets, you will itemize earned income, such as ticket sales and contracted services, unearned non-government income, such as corporate and foundation support, unearned government income, such as city, state, and federal contributions, and expenses. We will not go over the definitions of each line item under those broad categories in this tutorial, but again, those definitions are available in the budget worksheet. We will instead provide guidance on what to include in certain budget fields and how to ensure your budget numbers and narrative work together to provide the strongest picture possible of your organization's fiscal accountability. To start, please enter only whole dollar amounts with no decimals in each budget field, and keep in mind that these are operating budgets and no in-kind or capital support should be included. We'll first talk about the project budget. In this section, you will provide the projected income and expenses for your proposed CDF project that will take place during the upcoming grant period of July 1st through June 30th. Here are a few things to keep in mind when filling out your project budget. 1. You will enter your DCLA Cultural Development Fund request amount in the project overview section of the application form. The number that you input there will be pre-populated into your project budget. When you review your project budget, make sure that there is a number pre-populated in the DCLA CDF field. $0 requests will not be reviewed at panel. Because this is so important, I will say it one more time, $0 requests will not be reviewed at panel. If you would like to be considered for CDF baseline funding, you must make a request that is greater than $0. 2. When determining your CDF request amount, start by identifying your funding sources. If you are only applying for CDF baseline funds, inclusive of ads by score, your request should be realistic and related to the size of award you are eligible for as stated in the CDF guidelines. If your request includes additional sources, such as City Council member items, Create NYC funding from the Language Access Fund or Disability Forward Fund, or equity funds, your total may exceed the CDF baseline maximum. However, you must explicitly detail those sources in your budget notes. Please note that City Council initiative funding is strictly prohibited from your CDF project budget. This field will be pre-populated with 0 to prevent overlap between initiative-funded projects and CDF-funded projects. For more information on City Council initiatives, member items, and other funding sources, including their definitions, please review the application webinar and guidelines. 3. DCLA can only fund up to 75% of the total cost of your project. Therefore, your CDF ask, including any anticipated member item support, should not exceed 75% of your total project expenses. 4. Non-arts and cultural activities, such as homework help or sports, work that takes place outside of New York City or outside of the fiscal year for which you are applying, as well as capital expenditures, fundraisers, or government advocacy efforts are not eligible project expenses. Do not include expenses for any of these activities in your project budget. And remember that capital income and expenses should not be included in any of your budgets because we request operating budgets only. 5. All activity proposed in your project description should align with your proposed project budget so that panelists understand via your budget figures and notes how you expect to execute the programming financially. We'll go over 3 examples of how that alignment might show up. First, if you indicate that you will charge for tickets to your proposed project, then the panel would expect to see commensurate admissions box office income in your project budget. Conversely, if you indicate in the project details that your proposed project has no fee to participate, it would make sense that you have no admissions box office or tuition income. Or if you do show earned income because you are applying indirect income from another fee-based activity for this free activity, you should explain this clearly in the budget notes. Another example, if you say you are paying your artists, then the panel would expect to see expenses for artistic personnel or outside professional services depending on how you pay your artists. A quick note on this distinction. Personnel expense lines should include salaries for staff members for whom your organization makes withholding deductions. Outside professional services should include payments to people or firms on a fee-for-service basis, including stipends, honoraria, or contract payments for which no withholding deductions are made. And then last example, if an expense is not included in your project budget because it is covered by in-kind support, for example, if you receive free space or you work with a graphic designer that does your marketing for free, be sure to include that information in the in-kind support section of your organization budget notes. Ultimately, the size of your project budget should make sense with the scope of your proposed project, as well as with the size of your projected annual operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year. After you've filled in your project budget numbers, you will support them with budget notes. You will later do the same in the organizational budget section. As we've already started to discuss, the budget notes are an opportunity for you to contextualize the numeric information in narrative form. In addition to answering the questions asked, you should utilize the budget notes to help panelists understand anything that might not be immediately clear from the numbers alone. Project budget notes specifically help contextualize the numbers presented in your project budget and will help panelists understand how you plan to fund your proposed project, what it will cost, and how you will use CDF funding should you receive it. After inputting your project budget numbers, you will be asked to itemize your anticipated direct or indirect funding sources for the project by funder name and award amount. Indicate your received or committed funds with an asterisk. This means that you should name your projected corporate and foundation funders and the amount of the award that you anticipate from each. When considering what to include in these budget lines and in this field, think about how confident you are in receiving the funding. Budgets should be realistic rather than aspirational. Next, you will be asked to detail your sources of income and expenses for the following line items: contracted services, other earned income, other unearned income, other federal and state income, other city income, local arts councils, outside professional services, and other expenses. Here, make sure to answer the question directly and thoroughly. If you have included income or expenses in your project budget for any of the categories listed, then there should be a corresponding note for it in that field. While your response should be thorough, it does not have to be lengthy. You can simply list the sources of income and expenses. For example, for outside professional services, and depending on your project and budget, you might include a list like stipends for actors, designers, director, and graphic designer. If you would like, and although you are not asked to for the project budget, you can also break out the amounts. In this section, we will go over key organizational budget fields and notes together. At the top of your organizational budget, you will be asked to provide your organization's start date for each of the 3 fiscal years you are reporting. Your current fiscal year's start date will be visible to panelists. This start date will help panelists contextualize your project budget in relation to your projected annual operating budget. For example, if you share a fiscal start date with the city, that's July 1st, and you are applying to CDF for your full season, your project budget may closely align with your projected annual operating budget, and your project budget should not be bigger than your operating budget. If you have a different start date from the city, then there may be more variation between your projected annual operating budget and your project budget because they may only overlap for a portion of the calendar year. Be sure to note any anomalies resulting from your fiscal year start date in the budget notes. You can place your comments in the field where you are asked to account for any other anomalies or items in the figures entered for the operating budgets that may require further explanation. You will be asked to provide your annual operating budgets for 3 fiscal years. First, your most recently completed fiscal year. These should be actual numbers, though they need not have been audited yet. Second, the current fiscal year. This will likely be some combination of actual and projected numbers based on your fiscal year start date. And this should be for the full year, not year to date. And third, the next or upcoming fiscal year. This will be all projected numbers. Together, these 3 budgets help panelists understand the stability of your organization over time and whether you exhibit responsible fiscal planning. Again, regardless of your fiscal year timing, for all of the budget years, you should enter figures for the full year, not the year to date. A few things to keep in mind as you work on your operating budgets and notes. We ask you to project the full amount you are requesting from CDF in your operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Therefore, the same CDF request amount figure in the project budget should correspond to the DCLA CDF income figure in your operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year. In most cases, regardless of fiscal year timing, this figure will be the same in both places. In the rare circumstances that it is not, make sure that you've explained this clearly in the budget note field that asks for explanation of any anomalies. Just like in the project budget section, in the organizational budget section, you will be asked to list each source for budget entries for the upcoming fiscal year in the following categories: contracted services, other earned income, other unearned income, other federal and state income, other city income, local arts councils, plus outside professional services and other expenses, which are not shown on this slide. Here again, make sure to answer the question directly and thoroughly. Sources and amounts should be included for every category listed where you have included a non-zero dollar amount in your projected annual operating budget. If, as is shown on this slide, you have not listed any income or expenses for the categories listed, then you may write NA in the corresponding budget note field. Before you do this, however, please make sure that you have double-checked the list of budget categories you are supposed to address and that you have not included income or expenses in any of those budget fields. In the organizational budget notes, you will be asked to describe in detail the budget figures in the total subtotal lines that vary by 25% or more between adjacent fiscal years. If you are using the budget worksheet to prepare your numbers, it will calculate the percent change for you for total earned income, non-government unearned income, government unearned income, and total expenses. If there is a positive or negative change of 25% or more in any of the variation from previous year fields in the worksheet, then you must explain why that change occurred or why you anticipated occurring in the related budget note in the online application form. Some reasons for steep variation could be that you produced 2 shows in one fiscal year and in the next you are producing 3. Or you have a new experienced development manager and are in the process of pursuing new sources of income, or space costs might have increased substantially. These are just examples. There are a multitude of reasons why your budget may have shifted significantly between fiscal years. Your description of why the variation occurred should be detailed and specific to your organization. This is another opportunity for panelists to learn about your organization and how it operates over time. 2 quick notes. While the application budget worksheet calculates percent change or variation, the online application form does not. This is one reason why we recommend using the budget worksheet first before transferring your numbers to the online application form. To reiterate, even if you use the budget worksheet resource, which we recommend you do, you will still need to input all of your income and expenses and notes into the online application form itself. And second, while we only ask about the variation of subtotal and total lines, if your budget shows a big increase or decrease in any one line item between fiscal years, we recommend you explain the change in the budget anomalies field. For example, if your marketing expenses jump $30,000 from one year to the next, but the rest of your expenses are relatively stable, add a note explaining why you plan to spend more on marketing in the year with the increase. In addition to calculating percent change, the budget worksheet will also calculate total surplus and deficit for each of the 3 annual operating budgets and the project budget. DCLA is agnostic about the presence of a surplus or deficit. You are not expected to show balanced organizational budgets, as there are multiple reasons why any year's budget may have ended with a surplus or deficit. But if any figure other than 0 appears for any of the 3 fiscal years, those surpluses or deficits must be explained in the related budget note. Explaining why surpluses and deficits are present and what your plan is for using surpluses or addressing deficits helps panelists to understand the strength of your fiscal planning. Particularly if you have large running surpluses or large running deficits, you should include a detailed explanation of why they are there and your plan for using or addressing them. For example, if you have large surpluses, are you planning to start a reserve, and why is that important for your organizational stability? If you have back-to-back deficits, how do you plan to address them and who is involved in addressing them? If possible, this should go beyond using your reserves. How are you being proactive to ensure that your organization remains in good financial standing and can execute its programs over time? A note about perfectly balanced budgets. While there are many reasons why an organization may have perfectly balanced budgets year over year, including board mandates and accounting methods, we recommend that if your annual operating budgets are balanced across all 3 fiscal years, that you include a brief explanation of how you are achieving that balance in the budget anomalies field. And finally, please note that the budget worksheet will calculate surplus or deficit in your project budget as well. It is much more uncommon for your project budget for the proposed activity to show a surplus or deficit. So if you are intentionally reflecting either in your project budget, be sure to include an explanation in the budget anomalies field. We'll now discuss 3 additional notes fields. The first is member item support. As mentioned earlier in this tutorial, if you are anticipating City Council member item support, it should 1, be included in your CDF request amount, and 2, you should answer yes to the question, does your CDF project request include anticipated member item funding? And then list the amount you are anticipating and note which council member or council members you are anticipating it from. The next is in-kind support. So while in-kind support should not be included in any of your budgets because in-kind support is not operating support, you will be asked in the budget notes section to list the amount of in-kind support you received or will receive for your current fiscal year and to specify the sources. And then finally, near-term fiscal planning. So there's an application field in the board information section. Describe your near-term fiscal planning processes and priorities. What role does your board and staff play in creating the budget for the fiscal year? While this does not appear in the organizational budget section, your response may provide additional context to your organizational budget and offer panelists further insight into your organization's fiscal responsibility. As with all your budget notes, your response to this should be thorough, transparent, and specific to your organization. We understand that some applicants may find generative AI or large language models useful for responding to budget-related questions in our application. We don't recommend using these tools to review your budgets and generate responses for your budget notes, but if you choose to do so, please make sure you review any output for accuracy, clarity, and adapt responses so they provide details specific to your organization. As of now, AI-generated budget notes are easy to spot, often inaccurate, identifying surpluses where there are deficits, and simply recap whether a surplus or deficit is present, not why it occurred or how you plan to address it. This slide is only for organizations with missions that are broader than arts and culture and, as required, selected non-arts and culture as their organization type. Non-arts and culture organizations will submit 3 sets of budgets. The project budget, this is the same for all applicants and is submitted through the application form. 3 years of annual operating budgets for your cultural budget only. This will also be submitted through the application form. And then 3 years of annual operating budgets for your full organization, as well as a cultural budget for the same year as the IRS 990 you are submitting. These you will enter into the budget template available on the applying page of our website. Once completed, you will upload the template to the supplemental materials section of the application. If you are a non-arts and culture organization and you have any questions about what is required, please email your program officer or email the CDF Help Desk at cdfhelpdesk@culture.nyc.gov. We receive hundreds of competitive applications every year, and each organization's finances are unique for a number of factors, including but not limited to their situation, size, and discipline. The panel only has the information from the application form and the budget figures you submit to assess and evaluate your application against the evaluative criteria. Overall, use the online application form to provide the panel with everything they will need to understand your financial picture. Aim to make your budget and budget notes thorough, responsive to the questions you've been asked to answer, transparent, explaining any apparent anomalies or discrepancies, and specific to your organization. We have now reached the end of this tutorial. We hope it was helpful, and thank you for watching.